parable of the prodigal son. It's a story about a son who takes his father's inheritance, wastes it all, and then returns to a forgiving father. But it is a great mistake to think that this is a story about just one son. It's actually a tale of two sons. It's a story about a younger brother and an elder brother. We are meant to compare and contrast them. And if we don't compare and contrast them, we miss the radical message that Jesus is leading us to. He also wants us to see ourselves in the story. He wants us to see that we need something that's missing in our lives. He wants us to long for something. He wants us to seek something. He wants us to hope for home. Jesus' purpose in telling this parable was not to give us a sentimental message. He is here to say basically this, that everything you've ever heard and everything you've ever thought about how to approach God is wrong.
It's wrong? Whoa. Yeah, so that's a good lead-in, right? I'm here to preach on the prodigal son, and you're probably thinking, well, I've heard this story before, and I'm here to correct the heresy that Joe brought to us several months back.
Yeah! Woo!
No, I'm kidding. He has not done that. This is good. I might need it down just a touch, maybe. No, I'm going to be preaching on that. You've probably heard this sermon before. Not this sermon, but a sermon on the prodigal son. But a little bit different angle. And what, oh man, I just totally lost his name. Tim Keller leads to is that it's different than what we think, right? And so we're going to dive into that this morning. I want to first thank Anna. That was great, by the way. I love it. I know that you do this often, but it was excellent, so thank you. I just want to acknowledge you because I know that you do this on a reoccurring basis, and we appreciate it. It was really good. It got me in the place and ready for leading people to God's Word, so thank you. Let me pray first, and then we'll dive in. God, I pray that your Word would speak this morning, that you would be among us, that you would be here and speaking. To those that need to hear this Word, I pray that you would tenderly speak the way you do in this chapter to the Pharisees. I pray that you would tenderly speak to our hearts, that it would not be coming down as something that is from this mean, mad God at us, but it would be a tender word that would speak to our hearts, that would draw us close to you, and that would invite us back into your home. I pray that you would speak through me, set aside any words or thoughts in my mind that I want to portray, but may just be your agenda, your word this morning. In your name I pray, amen. So we're going to be diving into Luke chapter 15, if you want to turn there with me. Luke chapter 15 is where we find the story of the prodigal son. But I want to set up the context for us first. As I always do, I want to set the tone of what's going on. And so we're really going to be looking at the very last part of Luke 15. But I want to start at the beginning of Luke 15 so that we can understand what's going on here. So I'm going to kind of read some verses. They'll be up on the screen behind me if you don't have your Bible. Then I'm going to pause and dive into them little by little. So the first verse of Luke 15 says this: tax collectors and other notorious sinners often came to listen to Jesus teach. Okay, I'm going to pause here. Tax collectors in this day were these Jewish traders, right? These Jewish guys that were compromisers, that did not really sit well with the Jewish people because of what they did. And we've heard sermons on that. We kind of know what they are and who they are. But Jesus is sitting with tax collectors, right? Not the greatest bunch, not the most liked people. And it says notorious sinners. Now, notorious sinners here is not just your everyday sinner, right? We all sin. As a collective species, we're all sinners. But that's not what it says here. It says notorious sinners. And those are the people, if you think about gosh, the mafia or drug dealers or these people that are just known to be bad, right? They just make bad decisions all the time. And they're not scared to show it on their life, that they're sinners, right? In fact, notorious is an interesting word. I don't know if you guys are any MMA fighter type followers or watch the UFC, but there's a guy in the UFC called the Notorious Conor McGregor, right? And this guy actually, if you're a fan, you probably watched the fight last night. He had a fight where, this guy just has this reputation. He's called the Notorious Conor McGregor because he comes in and he just totally causes chaos with these fights, right? He leads up to him with saying a bunch of bad stuff about his opponent, and then he comes in and he's got this stupid swagger that he carries with him as he walks in. He just looks like an idiot, but he doesn't care because he wants to be notorious. He wants to be this known guy of just evil and kind of like just in your face. And sure enough, if you watched the fight last night, he comes out just ruthless and throws punches with his shoulder. He throws punches like this and breaks the guy's nose and ends the fight in like 40 seconds. It was crazy. But that's the kind of notorious we're talking about, right? Jesus is with these kind of people, these people that you would not want to associate yourself with. And so that's the opening verse, is Jesus is sitting with these tax collectors and these notorious sinners. And so we pick up again in the chapter, and it says that they were near him, and the Pharisees and the scribes, on the other hand, are sitting there as well. But they're sitting there questioning Jesus. What is he doing with these notorious sinners? And now these Pharisees, you have to think about, are more like us, right? These Pharisees are more religious people, are people that are watching their P's and Q's, and they're trying to be their best, right? The Pharisees are definitely more the religious type. And I'm going to put myself in that boat. I would see myself here as the Pharisee, not the notorious sinner, right? Not the notorious Conor McGregor. Now, Jesus is going to explain to these Pharisees, these religious folks, what it is that he's doing. And they're basically asking him this question, right? These Pharisees are saying to Jesus, what are you doing hanging out with these people? So all of chapter 15 is Jesus' response to these guys, okay? So you have to keep that in mind. Jesus is responding to the Pharisees, the religious people, to us right here in this room, about what he's doing with these notorious sinners and tax collectors, these people that are hated and not really well liked, people that are probably not in this room, right? What are you doing out there? Why are you not in here with us? And we are worshiping you, right? That's what church is, but you're not necessarily here. Now, he is here too, and we're going to see that in how he responds. But that is the setup, right? That is chapter 15. So, chapter 15, Jesus opens up with basically giving 3 parables. And these 3 parables are the responses, and I'm going to go through them really quickly, and then we'll focus in on the prodigal son parable. The first parable is about a lost sheep, right? There's this guy who lost 1 sheep out of 100. He goes looking for it and finally finds it, and he celebrates, right? And he says, I have found the sheep, and Jesus is saying, in the same way, verse 7, there will be more joy in heaven over 1 lost sinner who repents and returns to God than over 99 others who are righteous and have it straight away. In other words, Jesus is saying to the Pharisees, he's saying, I am here looking for the lost sheep, that's what I'm doing. In fact, let me back up a second. The Pharisees had already had this confrontation with Jesus a couple chapters back. If you look in chapter 5 of Luke, Jesus actually confronts the Pharisees when they say to him, what are you doing hanging out with these, same question, what are you doing hanging out with these tax collectors and sinners? And Jesus says to him, well, those who are well have no need for a physician, a doctor, but those who are sick, I have come to call the righteous, but I have not come to call the righteous, but sinners to repent. In other words, he's a doctor. He's not condoning the sin. He's not condoning the sickness, right? Doctor doesn't love the sickness. He loves the patient. He tries to help the patient get rid of the sickness. That's what Jesus says he's doing in chapter 5. Now here, he's saying, I'm not just here to get rid of the sickness. I'm here to find the lost. I'm here to save them and bring them to heaven, right? There's this idea of, I need to go find them. And so his answer to the same question that the Pharisees are asking in chapter 5 is now different here in chapter 15. It's a little bit more full, right? So not only do I need to come heal the sick, but I also need to come find them and bring them to me. That's a weird concept, right? We normally go to the doctor when we're sick. The doctor doesn't come to us. But that's what's happening here. So Jesus is giving these Pharisees these parables as if to say, this is what I'm about. This is why I'm here. This is why I'm hanging out with these guys. Second parable is this parable of the lost coin. Again, this lady loses her coin. She's searching and searching for it and can't find it. And all of a sudden, she finds it. And she has great joy, right? And so Jesus is trying to point out to these Pharisees, going, are you listening to me? Are you listening? This is what I'm about. I'm searching for the lost sinner, the lost tax collector, right? That's what I'm trying to tell you, is that that's what I'm doing with these guys. And he says it again. There will be more joy in the angels of God over one sinner who repents. Do you get it? You see, Mr. Pharisee, what I'm doing here, right? So that is the answer to their question. And he'll go one more step. And this time, he'll give a parable about a lost son. But he's going to go much more into depth. And this is where I want to start focusing on the message. But let me read first the section from Luke 15:11, and it'll be up behind me as well. It says this: to illustrate the point further, Jesus told them this story. A man had 2 sons. The younger son told his father, I want my share of the estate now before you die. So his father agreed to divide his wealth between his sons. A few days later, this younger son packed all his belongings and moved to a distant land, and there he wasted all his money in wild living. About the time his money ran out, a great famine swept over the land, and he began to starve. He persuaded a local farmer to hire him, and the man sent him into his fields to feed the pigs. The young man became so hungry that even the pods he was feeding the pigs looked good to him, but no one gave him anything. When he finally came to his senses, he said to himself, at home, even the hired servants have food enough to spare, and here I am dying of hunger. I will go home to my father and say, Father, I have sinned against both heaven and you, and I am no longer worthy of being called your son. Please take me on as a hired servant. So again, it's these lost sons, right? And in verse 20 it says, so he returned home to his father, and while he was still a long way off, his father saw him coming. Filled with love and compassion, he ran to his son, embraced him, and kissed him. This is what's happening at the party. This is what's happening in verse 1 and 2. And if you're listening, Pharisees, I'm trying to tell you that I'm after the lost son, the lost coin, the lost sheep, right? That's why I'm here. That's why I'm sitting with these guys. I'm God running to these people. I am the father in this story, and I'm running to my son, who's the tax collector, and he's out in the field, and he's coming back to me, but I'm running to him, right? Verse 21, his son said to him, Father, I've sinned against both heaven and you, and I'm no longer worthy of being called your son. But his father said to the servants, quick, bring the finest robe in the house and put it on him. Get a ring for his finger and sandals for his feet, and kill the calf we've been fattening. We must celebrate with a feast. You have a third party, right? You have the party with the lost sheep, you have the party with the lost coin, and now you have a really big party for the lost son. So his answer to the Pharisees of saying, well, why are you compromising? Why are you sitting with these sinners? All you could be doing is condoning or blessing these sinners for their wrong behavior. You sitting with them does not look good, right? I mean, if you guys think about when you go and sit as kids in the schoolroom, right? If you go and sit with a group of kids, you're not sitting there because you're about to blast them with how horrible they are. You're sitting there because you're with them. You're condoning what they're doing, whether good or bad, right? And that's a reflection on you. And that's what the Pharisees see here. They see Jesus condoning and blessing these sinners, and he's going, no. I'm not a compromiser. I'm here to find these guys and pull them out. So, Jesus has a real clear answer for these Pharisees. Well, that's the answer to the question that they've been asking, which is the first question, what are you doing with these sinners, right? But the second question is what I want to hone in on. The second question is this: why are you complaining? Why are the Pharisees complaining that Jesus is sitting with these guys? Luke 15:24 continues the story, and it says this: For this son of mine was dead, and now is returned to life. He was lost, but now is found. So the party began. Meanwhile, the older brother was in the fields working. When he returned home, he heard music and dancing in the house. And he asked one of the servants, "What's going on?" "Your brother is back," he was told, "and your father has killed the fattened calf. We are celebrating because of his safe return." The older brother was angry and wouldn't go in. His father came out and begged him, but he replied, "All these years I have slaved for you, and never once refused to do a single thing you told me to. And in all that time you never gave me one of the young goat for a feast with my friends. Yet when this son of yours comes back after squandering your money on prostitutes and you celebrate by killing the fattened calf." His father said to him, "Look, dear son, you have always stayed by me, and everything I have is yours. You have to celebrate this day, for your brother was dead and has come back to life. He was lost, but now is found." This message, this part, is for the churchgoers, right? It's for the people like us. It's for the Pharisees. Jesus is now not talking to the sinners. He's now looking over the sinners, over the notorious people, and right at us. He's looking right at the Pharisees when he's talking in this section. And he's trying to give them a tender word. Jesus, for the majority of the Gospels, does not go easy on the Pharisees, right? He talks pretty tough. He talks tough and he says some pretty tough things to them, right? He calls them whitewashed tombs, brood of vipers, blind leaders leading the blind, fools making disciples and turning them into sons of hell, worse than yourself. I mean, these are not easy words, right? And they're being called this stuff, but all of a sudden Jesus is turning his tune a little bit to give them a tender word that they need to hear, right? So I want to dive into that a little bit here this morning, and this will be the main point of the message. But let's look at what's wrong with a son's relationship with the father, right? It's totally distorted. The older son I'm talking. It's totally distorted. It's totally wrong. There's clues about this. So let's look at the first one, verse 29. It says, "But he replied, 'All these years I have slaved for you, and never once refused to do a single thing you told me. And in all that time you never gave me one young goat for a feast with my friends.'" Clue number one is I've slaved for you, right? Imagine what the father is feeling here. He's going, why are you using that word? Why are you saying I've slaved for you? That's not the relationship we have, right? You're looking at our relationship as a slave-master relationship, and I'm your father, right? That's number one clue. Number two, I never once refused to do a single thing you told me. As if the brother is saying to the father, "You're just a command giver. You just give commands to me, and I just do them," right? Acts 17:25 says this: "God is not served by human hands as though he needed anything, but he himself gives life and breath to everyone." You've got a slave and you've got commandments, and it's just all wrong, right? This is not the way the father wants his son to be viewing him. You're supposed to have a son and love and faith, not command giver, not slave. Mark 10:45 says, "The Son of Man came not to be served." So the son has got it all wrong. He thinks, I got to work to get my inheritance. I got to work to get my father's approval and to have a party with my friends, right? Jesus says this: I'm coming into the world to give my life as a ransom. I'm after people. I'm serving you. You don't deserve me. You don't serve me. I don't recruit, right? The gospel is not a help wanted sign. It's a help available sign. We can't do anything to earn it, right? God is freely giving it, and he's not looking for us to do anything to get it. He's not asking us for his help, for our help. He's telling us, I'm here to help you. And the son doesn't get that. The older brother does not get that. A good test to see if you fall in this older brother category is this. If you are looking at this story and thinking to yourself, the older brother's got a point, right? I mean, the older brother has been working for his dad. Here comes his younger brother who's a mess up, a screw up. And I kind of can see how he'd be a little bit upset about this reaction, right? If you're thinking that, and believe me, I have thought that, right? And you may be like the older brother. In fact, there's a better one. There's a story in Matthew that Jesus tells about another parable in Matthew 20 where a guy is working out in the field and he's been working all day, and then another guy comes in and works the last hour of the day, and then the master goes ahead and pays both of them the same wage, right? And I have for years and still struggle with that story because I go, that's not fair. How can he just come in at the last hour and get paid the whole day's wage? Like, you guys probably see that at work sometimes where it's like, this guy came in and I'm getting paid the same, but I've been here for how long and they just showed up and we're on the same pay scale, And that's a sign of an older brother, right? I am in that category. And Jesus says in Matthew 20:15, can't I be gracious? Should you be jealous because I am kind to others? What makes you tick? What is it that makes you go? Is it fairness? Is it, keeping the commands? Is it, I've got to do this. I've got to be this way. You're looking at the younger brother and going, he got a party. He didn't do anything to deserve it, right? That's a broken view of God's relationship with us. That's what the brother has, the older brother, going on. People don't get grace at a gut level, right? We don't understand grace. Grace is not fair. It's not fairness. And if we don't understand the grace we've been given, we can't understand the grace that others have been given, right? So it's a good test to do this when you see something, right? When you see sin, ugly, ugly sin, blatant sin, is your reaction mainly disgust or mainly compassion? Do you feel disgusted at that person, or are you compassionate for that person? It's a pretty indicting question, right? I feel disgust sometimes, I'll be honest. I see sin and I do not want to associate, I do not want to be a part of, I don't even want to talk to sometimes that person. But Jesus goes right into it. He sits down at the table with them and he's talking, right? And the older brother is going, I don't like this. You can't do that. You're a compromiser, right? What happens when we get disgusted is we then blame. We then blame. The second thing we do is blame. And so let's look at verse 30. It says, yet this son of yours comes. Right? Well, what is that? This son of yours? Not this brother of mine? Right? How many parents have done this with your spouse? Right? Your kid is being a total disaster. And you say, this son of yours is just ruining everything. You need to go talk to him. Well, what is that? As if I am responsible for my son's bad behavior, right? And not you, the other spouse. But it's a life of blame, and we do that all the time. We do that all the time with God, right? When we're functioning in terms of merit and pay, you become a blamer to the core. When you look at things like, I have to earn this, then everything that goes wrong is, well, it's not my fault. You see this at work again, right? Where something goes wrong. You didn't get a promotion, right? And all of a sudden you go, well, it's not my fault. It's because my coworker sabotaged me, and then this thing happened, and then it wasn't my fault, right? And you blame other people. It's kind of like Adam in the garden, right? He says to God, and God says, what did you do? And Adam says, well, this woman you gave me an apple. It's like, whoa, what, so God's to blame? Like, no way, right? But it's indicative when we blame that we're not operating in the same terms that God wants us to, right? We're responding in I have to earn this, and so it's not my fault. And we don't see grace at all. What does the Father say to all this? So I want to focus in on 5 things that he says And if you're a younger brother here, if you're one of those that is a notorious sinner, which I don't think anybody is, but if you are, then just enjoy this word, this tender word to the older brother. If you're an older brother like me, be ready to be loved by Jesus, because that's what he's doing right here. He is the Father in this story, right? So the first thing he does in Luke 15:28, his father came out to him. The son is angry, right? The older son is angry. And this is the very same thing the father did for the younger son. The younger son was running home, and he sees him and he goes out to him, right? Now here, the older brother is outside, and the father goes to him. The father is going to the older brother too, just like he did the younger brother. And, you've probably been there, right? Maybe you've seen this on the movies, or you've actually experienced this at Thanksgiving dinner when everybody's gathered, the whole family's there, and there's one person that is just mad. And they go storming out or make a scene, and they're up in their room, right? And you as the dad have to do this. You have to go and get that guy, that person, that kid, and bring them back to the Thanksgiving dinner so they don't ruin the whole thing, right? That's what the son, the father is doing. He's got this big party going on. The son is mad, doesn't want to come in. And so the father has to go out and get him. He has to go out and get him. And what do you think he's going to say, right? If that's my son, I'm going to be out there going, "You idiot! What are you doing? Get in there. You're in big trouble," right? That's not what the father does. He doesn't do that. He comes out, and it says in verse 28, his father came out and begged him. Now, begged is a good word. It's the right word here, but there's an older translation of that word called entreat. Some other translations use that word, entreat, and it's an old English word that we don't use anymore, right? But it's basically functionally begging. But entreat is an interesting word, and I can't help but think that Jesus used that word in particular in distinction to command, right? Because the older brother said, "I've kept all your commandments." And at this point, the father has every right to command his older son. He has every right to do what his son is accusing him of. And he doesn't come out and do that. He doesn't come out and command his son to get back in the house. He begs his son. Just to show you the force of that word, Paul uses that word in Philemon 8. And I don't think that Paul and Jesus were using the same word on purpose. It's not a tie here, but the same word is used in the Greek to entreat. And Philemon 8 says this, "Though I have confidence in Christ to command you to do what is proper, yet for love's sake I rather beg, I rather entreat." It's the same word. And I think it's important to understand that word because it's not performance that God is after. He's not asking you to do something. He's not commanding you to do something. If it was that, then it's your performance that he's basing his love off of. Instead, he's begging you. He's begging you. Parents get this, right? You all want your kids to behave. Whether they're 5 or 25, it doesn't matter. You want them to behave. But the whole mindset of I have the right, I have the authority, I have the command over you to tell you to do something, that whole structure is master-slave, right? If I'm commanding my kids, you must obey. Well, okay, they can obey, but if they don't get the heart of it, if they don't do it because they want to be there, because they want to do it, then they're missing the whole point, right? It's not the external behavior that we're after, it's the new relationship that we're after, right? And that's what the Father wants. Number 3, the Father calls him child. Now it simply says in Luke 15, it says 15:31, "My son." The Father said, "My son." Now, in the Greek, this word for son is not the same son that when the brother says, "this son of yours," when he says that word, it's not the same word that the Father's using, "my son." My son has to be looked at a little bit differently from the Father's, what he's saying here. In the translation, it's better rendered little child. And he's not demeaning in that sense. He's not saying, "Oh, you little baby, you little kid." It's a sense of, my son, my child, I've watched you grow up. Like, I love you. I know you. I change your diapers. My boy. please come in. That's the tone. Not this, son, get in there, you know. It's this begging, it's this breaking of a heart of a father saying, I want you in the house with me, right? Number 4 says, you were always with me. The problem is the kid didn't care about that. He didn't care. He was in the Father's house the whole time, and he didn't care about the Father. He wanted the party. He wanted to be with his friends. He wanted the money. He didn't want the first thing to do with his dad, right? And he was with them the whole time. How many of us have been here in this place with God, in his house? We don't want to be here. We'd rather be partying. We'd rather be doing something else, right? The deepest void in the older brother's heart is that he lived in the house of the Father and he wasn't satisfied. He wasn't satisfied. That wasn't enough for him. He had the privileges of everything, right? He had everything at his disposal. He had all the wealth and the house and the money and the everything. And he didn't find satisfaction in it. He says, you never gave me a party for my friends. You never provided what I really wanted. You know, one of the most striking verses found in Luke 16, a little bit later, is that it says the Pharisees were lovers of money. You don't think really about the Pharisees being lovers of money or lovers of a party, right? They're supposed to be in church. They're supposed to be tithing. They're supposed to be giving everything they have to God. And yet, here these guys are, and they're worldly people. They're using the disguise of wanting to be religious to hide their worldliness. They don't really want to be with the Father. They want the party. They want everything else. Jesus said to them, you are the ones who justify yourselves in the eyes of others, but God knows your hearts. What people value highly is detestable in God's sight. In other words, you're trying to put on a show. And that's not what God's about. That's not what the Father's about. The fifth thing is this, the last thing. The Father says, all that is mine is yours. Jesus is now looking over the heads of the sinners and the notorious people, tax collectors, and he's looking right in the eyes of the Pharisees, and he's saying, all that I have, all that is mine is yours. You have it all, right? But you have to see this as a son-father relationship. It's not a master-slave relationship. You can't work enough. You can't do enough good things. You can't put on enough piety to make your way into heaven, right? You can't do that. And what's crazy is that he leaves the story there. Jesus doesn't go ahead and finish the story, right? He doesn't go ahead and say, and then the son came in. And then he came in and everything was good and he loved being with his Father and never did that again, right? He doesn't say that. He leaves it hanging for us to go, what did he do? Well, what are the Pharisees doing? They're looking right at Jesus going, I know what he's saying. What am I going to do about it, right? Man, what are we going to do about it? We're being asked the same question. We're being looked at right in the eye by Jesus and saying, I want you to come in, son, daughter, I love you. I've been there this whole time. I don't want to command you. It's not a forced thing. I want you to come in because you love me. Right? Please, don't stay on the porch of merit. Don't boast on the porch of merit as an obedient servant. Come into the family, receive forgiveness from your brother and from me. And that's what Jesus is begging his son to do. We don't know what he does. Right? But that's the point. He wants to leave it in our court because now it's our decision. Do we go in? Do we stay out? Do we sit on the porch of merit? Do I sit here, stand here, going, well, I did this, and I did that, and I did this, and I did that, and I gave, and I prayed, and I never squandered your money, right? Sit on that merit? You come in, and you celebrate with your younger brother who was gone, who was lost, right? And I think so many times we find ourselves sitting on that porch, not wanting to come in and celebrate with our younger brother, because it's not fair. He can't just come in out of the field doing whatever he wants and now get this huge party. But we were there too, right? The Father had to come out to us, bring us in, tell us that it's okay, that he loves us. We can't stay out in the field. The younger brother came back. Are we willing to come back? One of the greatest tests, whether you love mercy, or is what test of whether you love mercy is whether you feel mercy towards sinners. You can tell if you're a Pharisee if you don't love the mercy sinners get. If you don't think it's fair. But if you love mercy, then you know you're in the right place. Luke 19:41 says this, and when he drew near and saw the city, he wept over it, saying, would that you, even you, had known on this day the things that make for peace, but now are hidden from your eyes. And in another place he says, O Jerusalem, Jerusalem, the city that kills the prophets and stones those who are sent to it, how often would I gather your children together as a hen gathers her brood under her wings, and you were not willing. See, Jesus, in going to Jerusalem, is weeping over his people, his people in Jerusalem of very much Pharisees, right? And he's weeping over them because he wants them to come back in. He's begging them to come back to the Father. And I can't help but think in the story, as Jesus is telling the parable, he's setting up the Father basically weeping on the porch, begging the Son to come in. It's this very tender moment. And Jesus is doing the same thing with the Pharisees as he's going into Jerusalem, weeping over them because they won't come in, right? He's also begging us, sinners of the worldly kind and sinners of the religious kind, come in from the foreign country of misery, come in from the porch of hard-earned merit. Both are deadly. But inside is the banquet of grace and forgiveness, and with all the satisfying Father, an inheritance, unfading, undefiled, incorruptible, kept in heaven for all who live by faith in grace and not by earning merit, right? That's what it's about. You can't earn it. It's all by grace. Let's not get bent out of shape about the grace he shows others. Let's rejoice. Let's celebrate. Let's party with the one lost sheep, with the one lost coin, the one lost son. And let us not stand on the porch of Mary and think that somehow we escape that same calling. Let's pray. God, I thank you that you beg, that you entreat us to come back, to be satisfied in you and only you, and not the riches that you have, not the mansion or the food or the party or the friends. I pray that we be satisfied in you. That it only be you that can bring us true joy. God, I find myself so many times on that porch storming out because my brother came in from the field, and it's not fair. But Lord, you want me to come in and celebrate with him. Help us to not be scared to go up to the sinners and the notorious sinners and the tax collectors, and help us not to be afraid of sitting with them. And we're not sitting with them to condone the acts they're doing, but we're sitting with them to bring them back like you did. Help us to not hide behind our religious piety, that we give enough, that we do enough to earn your grace. We don't, Lord. That work payment relationship doesn't exist, and I pray that we don't see it that way. We don't earn our salvation. That is pure grace. It's pure mercy that you give us. And in that sense, we're in the same boat as your younger brother. Help us to see that. Help us to have the courage to go out and get our younger brother and bring him back. Lord, don't let us just sit in your house thinking we must work. Help us go out of your home. Help us go find the lost coin, the lost sheep, Lord. Help us this week do that. And it's in your name I pray, amen. You guys, I think, are all used to what we do, but when you're ready, come and take communion. This is God inviting you into the home to celebrate. This is him saying, come off that porch, come back in, take the bread with me, because I gave this for you. So think on that. Think about how not only you need to maybe come in off that porch, but also how we need to celebrate our younger brother coming home. When you're ready, come and take hearts as you trust in Him. Your roots will grow down into God's love and keep you strong. And may you have the power to understand, as all God's people should, how wide, how long, how high, and how deep His love is. May you experience the love of Christ, though it is too great to understand fully. Then you will be made complete with all the fullness of life and power that comes from God. May we remember that this week, that He's brought us in so we can celebrate with Him. As usual, I missed being up here, not for lack of being asked, but because it's just been crazy with my own schedule. But as usual, we're done a little bit early, so talk to somebody about that. How can you be that brother who comes back in, who celebrates the lost sheep, the lost coin? And join us next week. Thanks for being here.